Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of City Talk. This week, we are delighted to be joined by former Cork City coach Stuart Ashton. Welcome, Stuart.
Hi, Paul. How's things?
Good.
Delighted to be on.
And thanks for coming on. Was really eager to get you on because obviously you've had a thorough history with Cork City as a kind of a former player, but I suppose more prominently even as a coach, and you've seen a lot of the current former and a lot of young Cork players coming through the system. So really interested in getting your thoughts on kind of the whole setup between younger players, and also delving into now obviously as first team manager of Cove Ramblers. So excited to get into all that.
Yeah, delighted to be here, and great show that you're doing. And as I say, delighted to chat with you anytime like yeah.
Appreciate it. So just to give people a kind of run through of the episode, we're going to catch up on, I suppose, what you're up to now, Stewie, obviously as the Cove manager and everything that entails at the moment, and also your role kind of outside of football, well, relatively outside of football, I suppose, outside of your job at Cove, and just kind of bring us back then to the start of, your footballing career, as I say, that into your coaching career and how that has evolved over the years in Cork predominantly. So Stewie touched on it there. You're obviously the Cove Ramblers first team manager now. Congratulations on getting the role. I think about a year or so now. And also, but you're also I suppose would be known to most people as the kind of coordinator for the FOSS course basically. But obviously, I don't think that's the title of it anymore. You might talk us through that.
Yeah, obviously, as you said. The two, the Cove one obviously speaks for itself. Just being the manager there, obviously that came with Stephen Henderson just resigning, basically leaving the club for his own personal reasons at the time, and it was midway through the season, so the obvious one was just to keep the staff that was in place there and work through the rest of the season, which is what we did. And then that obviously they were happy enough with what happened for the rest of that season, which led then to us staying, so to speak. So the staff that we have, Decky Coleman, James Claffey, Mark O'Neill and Shane Kavanagh as the backroom staff, we just kept it going and has progressed on from that to this season, if you can call it this season so far, with what's gone on. So on that one, obviously we're all looking back, and yourselves included, looking back to get playing for the fans and everything, and just the general feel good, I think, of having football back is the main one at the minute for us as players and coaches. It's been a weird time where you've not been able to do anything. Fellas have been keeping fit, doing their own little programs at home. But as you'll know yourself as a player, there's nothing like getting out with the lads and getting the ball out and having your change room banter and everything in a proper session. So those things have been badly missed by everyone. So as you know, we're back now for the last week or so, and looking forward now with an aim of starting at the end of the month. And I'm sure all League of Ireland teams are delighted to do that after what was an unforced break, which has took its toll on everyone and everything, So.
And I suppose what we kind of tend to do is we'll bring it around kind of full circle, and how I suppose your progression into becoming the Cove senior manager. So we'll bring it right back around. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch on your other role, really, just to kind of give people an idea of what you've been up to kind of outside of the Cove role. And I know you play an important role within, I suppose, the FEI as well. Just gives a kind of insight on that.
The day job, as they call it, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's the ETB, which was the old FOSS.
Yeah.
Which everyone knows it as, for the Roy Keane, the main one down in Cork here. Now the ETB, the Educational Training Board, in conjunction with the FBI, there's courses. Then I think there's 10 all over the country now, where we take a group of lads in, players obviously, but the other side of it is an educational side of it as well, which is the important one. As we all know, football doesn't last forever, and it can go taken away from someone tomorrow, so to speak, if you're playing. So we have the soccer course in Carrigaline, myself and Mick Conroy, and as I said, there's ones all over the country. But we take the lads in and we have it like an academy, whereas the lads are playing every day. We go out training every day, and then in the afternoons they will have an educational module to do, which is basically sports related. So you've got the nutrition, the anatomy, communications, which we work around the soccer, which is a big part of it now, and the social media side of it. And that's basically it. But the main one from it is the pathway that the lads can get. They'll be going to IT Carlo, back into UCC. So it's a good way for the guys that, let's say, for example, football minded and forget the schooling. They have opportunities, and then obviously from our own point of view, myself and Mick, we've been the football side of it, so we'd like to think that we could teach them a thing or two as well and progress them to the next level, whatever it be. Obviously we like all the fellas from the Coves and the Cork City underages coming in, but that doesn't happen like that. We get fellas from local teams, which is fine, and as I say, we try and progress them, and as well, coming into us every day, it's life learning skills as well, the punctuality of it, the responsibility of it. So we like to think that that's a part of it as well. Then give them a little bit of an education, as well as the football, so that somewhere along the line, hopefully they can use those skills they've learned. And as I say, a lot of them go back onto UCC. Just actually this morning, one of the lads was with us. He's gone on from us UCC in law, and he's just got his passed his
degree,
whatever it is there, like. So
brilliant.
And fellas going on different places. A lot of them go to IT Cal, which is sports as well.
So just to give people an idea, I suppose, who mightn't be too familiar with the setup of it, it's basically for people who've maybe finished their leaving cert and they're in between a year, maybe either, they're trying to track down a professional soccer route. It helps because you're training full time, or maybe it's a bit of a gap year if you're not sure education wise what you're kind of maybe looking to do. It kind of gives you a good grounding for the next step, really, doesn't it?
The big one you just said there, Paul, was the one where they don't know what they want to do. A lot of coming out of school after doing the leaving, and they're not set on, I'm going to be an astronaut or whatever. They know what they want to do, and it's an ideal time, especially if they're in the soccer as well, because obviously at that age, as we all know, they want to play soccer. So they still have those dreams. And again, hopefully, as we say, coming into us and combining it with the clubs that they play with, it gives them a chance, especially, as we said, the better lads in that. But again, some of those lads as well, the cuter ones, let's say, are planning to go to UCC with going back to get into whatever the PE is a big one that they all like to go into. Also, if they're not fortunate enough at the first time round in the leaving cert, then they're saying, right, well, we can give you the opportunity if you do the work, obviously, and that's a big one as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If they do the work,
and just to kind of give it, because only someone that we've had on this podcast recently, Colin Healy himself, spoke about how important that course actually was for him. Now it was probably more on the footballing side, that example, But he said that he was playing, I think, with Wilton at the time, and he was doing the fast course in the morning. So he was training in the morning, and he was training then with Wilton 2 or 3 evenings a week. He said it was probably the fittest. He was flying fit, and it set him up completely for when he went over to Celtic then, because he hit the ground running straight away. Also, other examples, I think Kevin Long was another one that he had down and thing. Obviously, he's gone on to be a big Premier League player. And also the likes of Gary Buckley, then even more local example, I think.
Yeah. Garrod, I think, was on it as well. Nults was on it.
Garrod, just it kind of goes to show really like that. Some great examples and how the course is doing some fantastic work. So fair play to yourself.
As I was saying on the other side of it, then not just the football side of it, but then the other lad now that has come in, he actually played with City at the underages, but then didn't, for want of a better word, make it. He's just playing local football, but he went to UCC now, and then he's just got his awards then in the law, like, So it shows that it's there for you if you want it, and it's a great one. It's a great opportunity for guys, and as you said and stated there, that when they're leaving school and they don't know what to do, because those years
that's the case in probably, like, if not half the people that are leaving school, at least they're like, even if you do decide on a college course, you're still probably, it's not, I mean, you're pigeonholed, you're still probably not even 100% sure. And the same for myself. I went to CIT doing marketing or business studies, and I still kind of wasn't 100% sure. You're still very young really at 17, 18, like, aren't you?
I think at that age, when you've got to decide what course you've got to do, and then if it's a 2-3 year one, it's very hard unless you really want it. Unless you know it's the one, it's hard to stick with it. And as you see, as you know and I know, fellas just drop out of those courses and say, I can't be bothered with that, like, which then is unfortunate and is a waste, like, and like with our one, they get kind of an allowance, like it's not fees involved, like there's no fees involved, so they get allowance. So we take, as I say, we use that as the life learning skills, whereas like we take that as the wage. So if you don't turn up, you don't get paid, kind of thing, like, so it's from that point of view. As I said, they've got the responsibility of that. We have them doing the little chores around the place, that all the gear and equipment. We have a little kitchen area that has to be cleaned. Someone's in charge of that. So we have it like a job for them. And it's funny, actually, we just got a text this morning, and it was one of the lads from the other course, and he said, I met one of your lads, Stuart, that was in the course in 2006. He said Vic would know him. He said best years of his life.
Go ahead.
That's
it makes our job worthwhile.
Exactly. And when you meet fellas out on the street, they say that, geez, I wish that course could have been longer, like, you know what I mean? Like, so when you hear those things, it's nice. And
sometimes it's the closest really that people get to a full-time football environment, really, like, because like even in England, like as you say, our players to move over, the education is still part of it, like, with their training and stuff like that, and they go to college. So it is the kind of equivalent over here, really, of a full-time, academy full-time player, really, like.
Yeah, exactly, and it is, as you say, it's the right way, really, because again, as we said at the start of it, the education is a big part now, because in football you don't know when that can, not through your own fault, obviously, but that can be taken away from you for any reason, like, So
look, as I think it's as you said there, it's for any players that might be watching this, that might be in that kind of category. It's definitely a superb course, and a lot of great examples have come to it. So fair play, and keep up the good work and that.
Cheers, thank you.
So I suppose we'll bring it right back to the start, really, Stewie. Obviously, from the accent and the accent, a lot of young players would recognise from all over Cork. But you're obviously not from Ireland or from Cork, but from Burnley, is it? And is that where you started your playing days?
Yeah, Rochdale. Just up the road from Burnley. Burnley's my team. I follow Burnley, still do. As from Rochdale, Burnley's just half an hour up the road.
Yeah.
And my dad was followed Burnley, my granddad. So as you say, it comes from your dads and your granddads,
Yeah.
who you follow more or less, like, unless
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
a rebel and go against your dad, like. So,
Definitely.
so from that point of view, yeah, I was brought up watching Burnley in the early 70s, as it is. So, and then obviously just playing the soccer at school, as everyone does, getting into your school teams, picked for your local team, which was the Rochdale Schoolboys, then your inter teams and all those things. I was lucky enough to be in those teams, and then got spotted. Various clubs, obviously Burnley was one, and so when that came in, there was no one else got a chance really. Like, yeah, so so then I was lucky enough to get offered an apprenticeship, signed from schoolboys, went in the school holidays, etc. Then signed from as an apprentice, and then unfortunately wasn't taken on. So then left them after my spell as an apprentice there, and then went to Rochdale and Crewe, 2 separate seasons, and then over to Cork.
Yeah. What brought you over to Cork? Was it just a couple of contacts you had, or what brought you over this way?
Yeah, the one was at the time, and I'm not sure whether they still have it as it was at the time, with the PFA there, if you're released from your club or you're out of contract, which I was out of contract, you put your name on it, and I just put my name on it, and obviously then that goes worldwide, and obviously at the time it was Bobby Tamblyn.
Yeah.
He got in touch with us, and the one was that I was out and my dad took the call. Obviously, my dad would have known of Bobby because of him playing with England and Chelsea.
Legends,
so he didn't know him personally, obviously.
Yeah.
But he knew of him when the name came up, like my dad knew, and I came in and he said, Bobby Tamblin's phone from Cork City, like, and I said he's interested in.
Had you ever even heard of Cork City, Stuart, at that stage?
No.
Yeah.
They obviously, my dad said in Southern Ireland, so it was a case of that we looked up on the map where Southern in Southern Ireland, like, and
what
again,
age would you be in then, Stewie? Would you're whatever, late teens, early 20s, is it?
Yeah, because I'd been with Burnley and then the 2 then, so it was early 20s, like, yeah. So it was a case then of that they would just I spoke to Bobby, and he invited me over.
Yeah.
And I went over, trained with them, and they were happy, and I was happy as well. At that age, obviously, I just wanted to play football, and it was a new chapter, so to speak. Obviously, all the other clubs were local to Rochdale, as I said, my home. So it was a big move as such at that age, but it wasn't, because I didn't think about it. I just wanted to play football.
You're a little bit different. I suppose the last people that we've had on the last couple of weeks are making the move from Ireland to England, but I suppose it was a little bit different. You were moving from England to Ireland, which probably wouldn't have been the norm, I'd imagine, back then. So as a young man, I suppose it was probably a bit of an adventure as well, I'd imagine. Like, was it?
Yeah, it was. With it, as you say, again, it was, it was one at the time, whereas it was just about the football. It could have been Timbuktu, being honest, at that stage. No, I've been honest with you, I had offers as other places, but there was one, I think there was one in New Zealand or somewhere like that, and then at the time, you got offered to go into teams, as in England and in the lower divisions. I got offered to go those places, but there was nothing concrete, so it was a case of, you can spend the time here, so there, and then being refused. Whereas with the City one, I came over, had a look, trained with the lads for a week, enjoyed it, and
What year would that be, Stewie?
that was 84. Yeah,
So
84.
that was the first year or so the club
Yeah,
had been officially formed.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So they're right from the start. Geez.
Yeah. So obviously Bobby there, and he brought Bobby Woodruff and Dave Bleasdale as well. So there's three of us. We all came over together, all in the same boat, all around the same age.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said, at that stage, it was just go and play football, see where it takes you. You know, so it was. Bobby was sound when we came over. He was here for a while at that stage. We knew of him obviously, and you know he was good to us as he was good to all the players, like, you know.
Yeah. And they talk us through kind of what came the years after that, I suppose. I know you had a spell with Galway, but how was your time with City and in the League of Ireland? Because just in case people don't know, you were a defender, was that right?
Yeah, I was a centre half or full back. I preferred centre half, but played full back. I came over, and I actually played left back for most of the games. At the time, we were playing at Flower Lodge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, David Barry was there at the first season, but then he broke his leg, so he missed a lot of that season. Then, like Dinny Allen, another one there as well, playing the dual sport, as they said. Like, so
you didn't know much about that at the time, did you?
There's what? Sorry.
I say you didn't know much about the Gaelic and all that at the time, did you?
No, obviously, I knew it was the main sport here, the Gaelic, the hurling and the football, like, but I didn't know as what was it, popular as it was until we got here, like, you know. So, you know, those were always the ones there. And at the time, then obviously we were in Flower Lodge.
Yeah.
So they were there, but then at that time they were always talking about Turner's Cross and the old Ibs and the Albion, the old teams, like, you know. So the history of Cork football was being told to us every time, which was great to listen to, and fellas supporters chatting to you about those things were brilliant, like, you know. So we were getting history from the supporters, so to speak, of all the good times, and the English fellas that had come over playing in those, you know, as well. And then, having said that, we had Trevor Brooking come over. He came over, played a game.
Yeah.
Terry McDermott, he stayed for a few. He played for about 5 games. Those, you know, so unfortunately at the time we weren't the best side in the league. Let's put it like that. Like,
you were brand new as well, like, weren't you?
Yeah, that was it. Like, it was a new setup for everyone, and obviously Bobby, harshly at the time, we felt like he got sacked after about 10 games. I don't think we'd won many, and we drew. I think we were drawing a lot, and obviously not winning. But obviously the board at the time then just felt it was a change, and Tony Allen then came in. Obviously he's passed away since then, obviously, and he came in, again, a different style totally to what Bobby was. But again, that's what it was at the time. The facilities weren't the best, if we're being honest. Like, you know, in Flower Lodge we had one of the better pitches, but training wise, then we used to be on the car park that was in Flower Lodge, or then down in Mahon there was I think it's Nagle School now.
All right, okay.
where they have the pitch there now, Nagle School.
Yeah, that's right.
That was always open to the main road.
All right, okay.
And so we used to have to run down.
Jeez.
And then train from Flower Lodge, and then back in, So.
Jeez.
And for us at the start, we didn't know where we were going. So the first few training sessions, it was right. We see you back at the lodge, and we were just had to remember the main road up and down Quarry Manor Road,
That's right, yeah.
So,
Jesus. But go through kind of, I suppose, your playing days from the years kicking on. Then, kind of, did you? How long were you with City for? Just for some people that might know, and then you know your different spells elsewhere and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was with City for the 2 seasons then, and again, like all things with the League of Ireland, it was then a case of they said they couldn't offer me another contract for the money, obviously then there's the lads that were there at the time. We were kind of in the lurch then, as in,
looking around.
We were the only ones that were over as professionals, so to speak. Then most of the other lads had jobs, so to them to be kind of let go or whatever was not as bad. Obviously, no one wants to be let go or anything like, but it was. But for us, it was our jobs as such, So basically, then Galway came in for me after the 2 years with City. I went to Galway for a season, and again the same thing. They were playing the same game with me then. Stay but we can't give you the money, so that carry on. So we went back home then, and I played non-league, and then it was then we decided. Well, as my wife decided that we were coming back.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, Sharon, my wife, from Cork, so it was always the plan. Really, I didn't have any problem with it. That we went to England for, I think it was a year or 2, and then we just said, right, we'd go back to Cork and see what happened from there. We had no settled as such, we were young enough at that stage, so we didn't. So we just we came back to Cork then. That was in 1990, I think it was. So or was it just before then? Maybe a bit earlier than that, actually. And it was Noel O'Mahony was in charge then.
All right, okay.
So I came back and Noel was there, and I just spoke to him, and he said, "Yeah, welcome, come and join in." Came back training. Obviously, there's 1 or 2 of the people around the club that knew me anyway, so they kind of obviously told Noel I was useless or I was good or whatever. Luckily, they said, yeah. So I was back in and playing again then. And it was actually 90 when I finished playing, I'd say, and went into the coaching then, myself and Bowdy.
Yeah, so you started off very young, so did you, as a coach?
Yeah, it would have been early 30s as such, so. But I was actually injured towards the end of my City time, and I was playing a lot in the reserves, and I couldn't get in. So kind of with City reserves as it was, playing with them, and probably there without knowing it, just doing the bit of coaching with who was in charge at the time, which was JD. Do you remember JD?
No.
Bob, the old chairman's brother, JD O'Donovan.
Right.
So yeah, so he was kind of in charge of the reserves, so kind of fell in with him, helping him out with doing that, and obviously enjoyed it. And then, as I say, Bodie took over the youth team, and he said, would I come in with him? So myself and Bowdy were with the youth team then, and then from that period then, basically myself and Bowdy did various teams at home
Yeah.
age.
So,
So
so you're like after leaving a couple of years ago, what is it? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago now that you left. But so your time at City really probably spanned nearly what 20 years or so
yeah,
coaching
yeah,
the academy.
that's right. Yeah,
It's a huge amount of time. Like really, you've seen it all. Really, haven't you, through your time at City? But kind of like, and you've seen so many different formats as well, haven't you? Because like I know speaking to Colin back then, there was like you just had your standard, your say like your youth team, then your reserve team, might have been the Munster Senior League team, under 17s, whatever. There was only
yeah.
2 or 3 teams there max, really. So no, right through to kind of the way it is today, it wasn't like that really. Like sure, it wasn't where you had your
No,
top
the
15.
structures of the League of Ireland teams has gone way better. As you said, at times there was when we first started, there was a youth team
Yeah,
and then basically a first team,
yeah,
and that was it. Then as they went along, um, they brought the A Championship. Did you play in the A Championship?
yeah. I did. Yeah,
Yeah. So there was the A Championship, then a youth team, um, you know, and then they've gone, as we know now, the 19s, 17s, 15s.
yeah. Because even going back to before, it was the youth team basically or the reserve team. They just played in like local leagues, didn't they? Like even like back when I was playing in the youth teams, I suppose really when I was there, 17s, it was 17s youth, and then it was the under 21s. So, but like the under 21s obviously played like in the kind of similar league to the first team,
Yeah,
but the 17s and youths, I suppose it was always kind of looked on really like, like you'd always have the best players from around Cork, and you generally be winning the league and you'd be winning the cups. But I suppose people kind of looked on that then saying, oh look, probably maybe Stewie and Bodie, they have easy jobs, they have the best players from around Cork and you're winning all the titles. But even from the time I was there, it was never really about, look, of course you wanted to win and you wanted to win the leagues, you wanted to win the trophy, but it was always about progression, really. And is that something that's always been kind of at the forefront during those times?
yeah. As you said, the one you put it nicely, like Stewie and Bodie had easy jobs. They
Mm.
never said that to our faces, like
They probably still wouldn't.
that's right. They were calling us everything under the sun, like, you rob this player and you rob that fella, and like so. But again, as we went through that, it was a case as you said, it was the progression, and for me as a coach, it's about the players. It's got to be. Um, it's about him, and we're helping him on a journey. And as a club, even with the likes of the Cork Cities, the Coves now, they if a fella comes in from the Premier League,
Mm.
I are we entitled to stop him? Yes, we don't want him to go because we want him to be the best player in our team, but you know, for me, you can't stop him because that's the progression for him. Let him go and challenge himself where he can play at the better level. So, and that's nothing. That's nothing about um, the teams that we're with at the minute. That's just the league that we're, the
It
country
is,
that
yeah.
we're in at the minute. Like, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's the way we are. And for me, as I say, for us at a Cove, if a fella goes and someone's chasing him in England, that's the better level than us. Obviously, we want it done properly and the right
Yeah. Yeah.
procedures and everything,
Yeah.
and so from that early age, as you said, it was for us at the time. It was I say yes, we should have been winning the league every time, and as you say, the better player wanted to come and play for us. One or two didn't because they were loyal to their own clubs. That was fair enough, but it was for us that the team that we had and the players that we had, it was about getting those guys into the Cork City first team and making Cork City first team the best it could be at that time.
And I suppose going back to 20 years, like it's an unbelievable amount of time in that role. Was that always something that you were conscious of, Stewie, of working with younger players and that progression, or was it always kind of and obviously you're the first team manager now, it's the highest, one of the highest jobs in Ireland, really, so was it always kind of a progression until the senior management, Stewie, or you were really engrossed in the development of players?
It's one of those that yes, some people were set out with, I want to be the manager of XYZ. It never set out like that. It was just a case of we were coaching and delighted what we're doing, happy what we're doing, getting the results of hopefully progressing players and making them better players. That was the main thing, and I think that if you do that, then your team speaks for itself. If you can get a player to improve, and as you know, if you get 9 players playing on a day, you've got a chance of winning, you know what I mean, and believing in what your philosophy is of the way you play. But the main one was getting the players progressed, and from that point of view, it was I never set out with the intention, I'm going to be a League of Ireland manager, you know what I
mean? You were just working in the moment, really.
Yeah, again with those, and it's like any job, it's the right place and the right time, along the line. If you look at the managers that are come in, at the time, that's the way the club went. They brought Pat Dolan in, Derek Mountfield in, those guys, so it was, I suppose, at the time, I was never thought of as the first team manager, and it never came up as that. So, look, that's what it is. I was always in part of, my job was mainly then. As the years went on, it was kind of, as you said, the A Championship, which was the reserve team.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to come on to there. So obviously, it would have been kind of Bodie, another person who done fantastic work in the academy over those years, kind of alongside yourself. And I suppose he would have been working with the kind of the lower, obviously to be working with the lower age group. And then you were predominantly, I suppose, the reserve manager, whether that was the A Championship, the under-21s. So especially in the club, the way it's been, I suppose, for the last 20 years, majority of it's been full-time professional setup. How did you find that balance, Stewie, of bringing through, I suppose, local young Cork players, and then you also had to deal with, let's say, the couple of 5 or 6 senior players that were coming down playing for you on the weekend that probably, first of all, they didn't want to be there, either because they're not getting in the first team, or and then you're feeling like that you probably had to play them because the first team was priority and they needed minutes. There was always a bit of that going on, so it wasn't an easy task, really. Was it?
No, it wasn't, and I think one of the first times where City kind of went professional, I think they had a squad of 30 odd professionals.
That was Pat. Pat was the manager then, I think, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and from that point of view, then obviously he wanted game times with those guys, and obviously the underage structure. We had the youth team, and we progressed them guys onto the A Championship. So it was getting the blend right, as you say. There was no problem with the young lads. They wanted to play, and they were pushing to try and get into the first team, etc.
And that's what I was saying. Is it the case then that you're possibly stunting people's growth, really, of the younger players, if you're putting those lads who don't even really want to be there in, just for the sake, because the first team manager is what he wants, really,
Yeah, and that's the dilemma of all those, those
scenarios.
Underage, really, you know what I mean. I like to think that I got a performance out of the players for their own good. A certain fella came down to me after a bus stop with a manager and he was walking out of the club like he'd had enough. And I just said to him, "Who's going to lose? Who's the loser in all this? Like, forget the argument, whatever happened with the manager." But I said, "Now, who's losing?" I said, "You're going out the door, not wanting to play." I said, "What's your job first and foremost, and what do you love doing?" As you know, every footballer loves football. So I'm playing football. So I said, "What are you losing out on?" And he looked at me and he said, I said, "Well, let's keep the head down now. You've been sent to me to keep your fitness." I said, "Let's show now everyone what you're about." I said, "Let's train properly with me for your own personal sanity." And I said, "Then if you have to play with me, show everyone, boom, who's wrong. Whether you're wrong or the manager's wrong, show them and tell everyone, why is he playing with Stuart Ashton's reserve team when he should be with, So and with that fella, he did, in fairness, and I still meet him in the street now and again, and we'd have an old laugh and that about that kind of time where he told the manager what to do, and he come to me like, but it's, again, it was a hard one, fellas, because initially because they think they should be in the first team, but again, at the end of the day, like I'd be saying to him, right, well, let's prove him wrong. Let's play in this team here, get the result, but let's get the performance out of you and show him. I said, if you're going around sulking, you're not going to be playing anymore, So I had to do a little bit of persuasion to a few of them, like here.
But that's something I always found, that even with you kind of treated everyone the same, really, which was great, whether it was players coming on from the first team or a 17, 18-year-old just coming into the team, you kind of treated everyone, you'd be as kind or, not so kind sometimes, but equally it's the same. And I think that's what players took to, really, you know what I mean? Because the way dressing rooms are, players aren't stupid. They can see how they're being treated and everyone else is being treated, and everyone just wants to be treated fairly, really. And whether you like it or not, you'd respect it at least.
And that was the main one, is the fairness in a dressing room. And you know me long enough. I'll be honest with people. Sometimes people don't like that, but it was, the honesty was about getting the best out of them, and that was the main thing. That was my job as the coach, to get them playing. And as I said before, if you get majority playing, everyone has a bad day in football. We know that, they can't kick a pudding some days, but that's football, But getting them doing their job, and then your team performance, and then they get back to where they want to be as well, especially if they've come down from the first team, and for whatever reason they're not in it, blah blah blah. If they keep doing the business, it's like everything. Everyone loves an old mollycoddle now and again,
Absolutely, definitely. And I suppose something that kind of really stood out to me as well when I was there at the time was, Cork's a small place, really, and everyone knows everyone, and especially through schoolboy football and stuff. You would always have, let's say, the stars coming through, really, the players that were always on the Cork teams or whatever it might be, and the names going around the place. But I found that no matter how big a person had a name, because you were in that transition age between basically youth team and the 21s, and you were probably only keeping about half of the youth team, if that many, to progress onto the 21s that was there already. But what seemed to stand out is that you never really went for the names, you never kind of chose the obvious ones, is probably the right word to say, of the fellas that you would expect to be brought through to the 21s. I always thought that you cut fellas that had the blaze and reputation coming through schoolboys, and you had no problem leaving them go after youth, because you just didn't, what's your mindset there on that?
The big one there, Paul, is obviously, we can talk on fellas that that missed out, so to speak, and the one at that age there is the overall package of what do we have from them, and you have your own personal bit of talent that's got you where you are playing at the level with City, etc. I have my bit of talent, but then it's the one then who has the right attitude, who has the potential, and sometimes the guys with that potential don't have the right attitude. They came to City, and even at Cove nowadays, they come there and they think they've made it, and they then don't perform. Whereas then the so-called lesser talent, he showed that he wants it, and you can work with a fella who wants it, whereas the fella who thinks he has it and doesn't want to work, you're fighting the battles there. So from that point, at those ages, you've got to see, what's their mentality. Do they want this enough? Are they prepared to sacrifice?
Is that something you're looking for as an all-round package, like from being around trainings and matches and just kind of scouting them from afar, really, like over a year or two, is it?
Yeah, like first of all, you're looking and you see the potential, you see that light, and then once if you take the chance on that potential, obviously if he's unknown to you, you get your bit of history on him, do the background check, so to speak. What's he like, what's his upbringing, so to speak, and then once you have him in, personally dealing with him, then you get the better feel of, does this guy want it or doesn't he, like,
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately for the kids today, they come into the age group of the 17s and 19s, and they think they've already made it. Like they just think because they're in the 17s, they'll go to the 19s, then they'll go to the reserves and the first team. Fortunately, that progression doesn't happen if you don't do the business and keep showing what they've took the chance on you, so to speak, if you want to put it like that, in the first place, then you won't get to that first team. And a lot, as you've seen a load of fellas, even at the Munster Senior League season, you've seen fellas with potential that have come up from different clubs and then just wandered away and gone off because they just can't be bothered, like, basically.
Yeah,
and that
it
potential
goes.
is wasted.
It rings true really at all levels of football, like, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And it's and the one I would say with that is that at the younger age, you don't get your rewards till later on. Like you got to make the sacrifices, like which is even more so, like from the earlier days. You'd hear the stories of players going out on the Monday clubs and all this carry on. That's all gone now. The sacrifices now is, your nutrition as well, which is all part of it. You're looking after yourself. You're, even the such as the social media now, like, what I mean? You've got to be careful on those things. And as I said, you get your rewards for your sacrifices of not going out with your mates on a Friday night or whatever it is and staying in ready for your game. If you're prepared for those things, attitudes right, your rewards will come when you get to your first team, and then you're playing regularly there, and hopefully then you might move on to something bigger and better again. Like, those are your rewards then, like, but it's such a big industry at the minute that it's a dedication, and again, as I say, if you love the game, which we all do who play it, it's not a bad one to be dedicated to.
No, absolutely not. And it's just something that I wanted to kind of touch on you with, because look, conscious of the amount of time that you've spent in the underage, and you must have seen 100 different structures that they've put in over the years, but just kind of focusing on the current structure really of the academies, with the 13s, 15s, 17s, 19s. There's obviously been a lot of pros and cons to and a lot of opinions on those setups from the football community, I suppose, all over the country. But what are your own thoughts on the current setup and that, Stewie?
Yeah, obviously the setup at the minute is based on other models from other countries. Again, it's a great model, Again, but I think the one that we have to look at is, and I think the big one that most people are complaining about is the one between the 19s and the first team.
Yeah, that's something I was going to come on to. So, like, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about, like, let's say, Cove or Cork City putting a team into the Munster Senior League, and I know it's not that straightforward, and there's a lot more to it. But look, I suppose, Stewie, at the end of the day, ideally, clubs like Cove or Cork City, you'd love to have like an under 21s or an A championship where you just put in your reserve team. That was for financially, obviously, it's a lot more difficult for clubs these days to kind of to support that and do that. So what do you think are the alternatives? Would you have an idea on that?
Yeah, as you said, and you brought it up, the finances is the big one. We've got the models, of the underage structures, and that's fine for the English clubs, the Dutch, the German, etc., where they're full time, and they're generating the money from that, and I think that's the big one. Whereas most of the clubs in the League of Ireland will be complaining about the finances of having all those teams, So to get the balance right is a tricky one, because hopefully if you're bringing them in at the 13s, 15s, 17s, 19s, you've produced a player then in your club's philosophy, and hopefully then you're breeding players that are going to go into your team. But again, as you said there about the 19s and then no team,
because it's a huge gap, like, isn't it? It's a huge step up in every way, really, because like I touched on it with the guys previously, that gap from when you're 18 into a first team, like I know when I went training with the first team for the first, like I was like, oh my god, like this is unbelievable. And look, I know, you're talking about the likes of, your Dan Murray's, Colin Healy's, they're probably even on another level again, like, but it's still at the same time, even the full-time training, it's extremely difficult on a young player, like, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that is the problem, because no matter what, like when you step up to that, it's just a big culture shock, full
It
stop.
is a shock to the system.
The
It is.
pace of it, and even the physicality of it.
Yeah.
You're going in there as a youngster, 18, 19, and you think you're a big brute of a fella, but you just get a little tip from one of the players and you're flying, like,
Yeah.
And as for me, I think that's the one that needs to be looked at.
Do you think the Munster Senior League option could be a good one, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the one, as you said, from previous years, there's complications of that, like, and putting them in there, but yeah, it's hopefully could be something that could be looked at. But my personal one, and I've said it out before, is I think there should be what used to be like the old the A Championship or the 21s, where that you had majority of young players, and you could bring back, say, 3-4 overage, so you'd have a bit of experience playing with the youth, fellas that weren't in the first team squad that weekend could get game time, and again, it's the best of both worlds, because you've got fellas, young lads playing with experienced fellas, and you've got experienced fellas that are trying to get fit after an injury, for example, and trying to get back into the first team.
Because as a young player playing with some of the first team players, it is brilliant. Like, you love it. Like, I know the first team players coming down mightn't have much of an interest, but being in a dressing room or being on the pitch with some of the older players, let's say it was a gamble or whatever it was, coming back from injury or a suspension, whatever it might be, if they're playing, like, you're like, you're thrilled really, like, you're getting to play with some of these caliber players, like, they might realise the effect that it has on a younger player.
And that is it. That's an invaluable experience for those young lads. The majority of players, the older players, would help the young lads. And obviously, you hear stories, and I've seen stories of one or two fellas giving young fellas hard time on the pitch, But majority of time, an experienced fella would give a young fella. He's good enough to be at the club, so they would have time for him. So that experience for that youngster is invaluable, because he's, as you say, he's looking up to a first team player anyway, and then when he's playing alongside him, he's delighted. Being honest with you,
I don't think it's the end of that one on the, I suppose, on the gap there really, that's between the 19s and 21s, or the 19s and the first team. So hopefully that's something that's resolved or comes to fruition over the next couple of years, because
if they are looking at it, that's I think that's the next step that they will look at again. Again, it's going to be another one, finances as well.
And I know the perception out there is that, like, in some of the arguments, is that, if they're not ready for the first team when they're 18 or 19, they're not going to make it. But I definitely don't think that's the case. That's my own personal point of view. I believe that there's a lot of players out there that are late developers and don't come into their own, whether it's physically or in other areas, until their early 20s, and can really make a stamp at it then.
Yeah, again, it's the one. The what makes it more difficult for our guys at the 19s is because they're playing in that environment, that they're playing against their own age group, Whereas, and I think even Les Ferdinand at QPR, he's the technical director there, or whatever. He even said it with those, that now we're actually creating technically better players, but we're losing the physique and the experience, because those guys in England are playing at academy levels as well. Whereas he was arguing what we were just saying there is, should there be a reserve team? Whereas fellas from all ages, if you're and what you're saying is where the saying probably came from. If you're good enough, you're old enough. That probably came back from when he was playing as a 16, 17-year-old. He was thrown into reserves against 30-odd-year-olds or whatever. And so that's probably where that saying has come from in football. Whereas before, they had the reserve teams, and if you were good enough, you went from your youth team, whatever age, into the reserves. And I think that is a big step. And hopefully, if they can find that back as another step in the pathway to a player's progression, it'd be an ideal one. That's obviously for the powers to be to decide that. And hopefully, as we're saying, it's a step that I think most people at the League of Ireland level and 19s and first team, I think they're all more or less agreed on that. But again, as we keep saying, we're not the Dutch clubs and the Spanish clubs and the English clubs with all the finance for those things. So it's putting it in its place, I suppose.
No, absolutely. And look, before you kind of wrap up your time as I suppose in the Cork City Academy, fantastic years, obviously, like during that period, endless trophies as we touched on, but probably more important for yourself, endless kind of production line of players, whether it be for Cork City, players who've gone across the water, Myler, Kevin Long, recent players to boot, Alan Brown. You've seen them all really, and the work that was done in the academy was invaluable, really.
Yeah, obviously, again, to an extent, as you say, we had the pick of players, as such. But again, it was for me getting that mentality right with the players, that went across, like, you know, Dave Myler, for example, his father hurling, you know, the battle with him at the time, when he was with the youth team, was he wanted to go and play hurling, you know, and so it was a case of, when he first came to us, he said, "Look, I'm playing hurling this one," and we're saying, "What do you mean, like, you know?" And it goes back, you know, like the GA carry on again, like, you know, he was saying, "Jeez, what, you know, we're a football club, like, what are you up to, like, you know?" So it was, and so eventually, and I'll never forget it. I remember he was there, and we were playing a game. I think a semi-final. We're in either the National League or the local semi-final cup, whatever. And he said to us, he said, "I don't know." I said, "I've got a hurling game, like, you know." And I said, "Look, Dave," I said, "that's fine." I said, "But along this route here, now your pathway, you've got to decide which one you want to be, like, you know." Yeah. You've got to either go be a hurler, which I've no doubt you will progress in, or you've got a chance here of playing football, soccer." And I said, "Look," I said, from our point of view, you've got to make a decision." And he came back to us a few days later, to me and Bowdy, and he said, "Look," he said, "I'm sticking with the soccer, like, you know." And the rest is history, as they say there. Like, he went
to be a good decision.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you know, there was a few then went the other way.
Yeah.
You know, Rob, I can't remember his name now, but one of the guys, he was big into the GA. He missed the All Ireland final because he was going over to Australia playing a game, and he actually stayed out in Australia playing the GA there for a while. Then, like, you know,
yeah.
So,
just shows different paths, like, doesn't it?
Exactly, it's each to their own. But again, as you say, the different fellas and the different times coming through, you'd like to think that you have some little say in their careers, like, you know. Again, as we've said in this chat here, like, it's down to themselves at the end of the day, with their attitude and their determination to where they want to go. Like, you know, you see that in certain players, that they've had that more than others, like, you know. And that's the big driving force. And as I said, for a coach, you'd like to say you've had some little input on the way. Most talk to me anyway when they see me, so I can't be
Very good. And look, you moved on from City then, obviously, a couple of years ago, taking up an assistant manager's role at Cove Ramblers under Stephen Henderson. How did you find that progression again there, Stewie, from, I suppose, dealing with a lot of the younger players, and I suppose going, and something probably which comes into fruition when you took over the senior job, probably dealing with a lot of the younger players again, which probably suited. How did you find the change from City to Cove, I suppose?
Yeah, again, you know, I found a natural progression, being honest with you. The one, and we didn't touch on it there, within the City role, especially when I was with the underage there, with the reserve team, as we called it, with the 21s, etc., etc. You know, what I have to say, and I was delighted with that, most of the managers, they would be in contact with me and have me around the players in the first team. You know, they'd have me at training sessions, and they'd have me in the stand on match days and come in the dressing room half time. So that was a big part of it, especially for the underage as well, where that connection was with so that, you know, the senior players knew who I was and what I was doing, so to speak. So then, having said that, then going then, obviously Stephen asked me down there. It was just a chat with him of basically what he wanted me to do and how we were going to play. We agreed on that, and again, from his point of view, he was saying, "Look, it will be young lads," which obviously was probably why he came in for me at the time as well. Partly that I hope only partly that, like, otherwise,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So from that point of view, it was a continuation, so to speak, just the next step up the ladder, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
And again, I was doing what I love doing, which was the coaching. Like, so, that was the main thing when I went there, that I would be still coaching and still be involved in that, like,
And you spoke there. Obviously, Stephen left kind of halfway through the start of last season. So, just kind of what I kind of wanted to come both together really was you took over as first team boss then as for Cove, but you had previous spells as kind of interim manager really for the first team in Cork City, and that's why I kind of wanted to mention it now because.
Yeah.
Did you find that experience that you kind of had in those spells? Because one I think was after Tommy left was for a couple of months. I think you might have saw at the end of the season, and you turned the season around really that year, and it was a great success. Did you find the experience from that helped you kind of progress in into the Cove senior manager's job? And I suppose everyone knows how much of a great coach you are and stuff like that. But I suppose, and sometimes I talk to Neil on quite regularly, the difference between really being a coach and a manager and the different things that you have to deal with a manager. Did that help you kind of that stint dealing with probably senior players and that?
Yeah, again, the one as we just said a minute ago, there was that with City, I was lucky with the Pat Dolans, the Damien Richardsons, that they involved me in the first team, and that I was part of it. I was in and around the dressing room. Tommy was the same as well. Like, so from that point of view, it wasn't too bad.
Wasn't brand new.
As what? Sorry.
It wasn't brand new, like as in like it was quite familiar.
Yeah, exactly. I was familiar to them, and they were familiar to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were wondering. One or two of them that hadn't come up through the City ranks at that stage were wondering then what I was like on the pitch, like, etc. So, but it was the continuation there, and then obviously when we got on the pitch, it was Woodsy with me at the time as well. Obviously, he finished playing then as well, like, so the two of us knew the club and were around the club. So it was just getting on the pitch, and at that time it was basically just getting the confidence of the players back. They were going through a bad patch, so to speak, and it was just encouraging those guys and getting them playing again, because the talent was there. That's why they were at City, So, and luckily for me, it went right. As you said, the manager gets the credit for that when he's only doing his job, like, you know what I mean. So you take the plaudits for that when it goes right, and you get the sack when it goes wrong, like, So
the game running, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So from that point of view, that fell into place. But again, the difference between the coaching and the management, and again, was one where the players, first thing when I went in there as the caretaker coach that time, was that I think there was a bonus due or something, and it wasn't paid on time. Like, so I had them all
knocking on your door, like,
knocking on the door saying so. Then I think it was Dan Murray was in like the spokesman for him, so I had to kind of sit down with him and then go back to the club and just say, look, what's going on here and everything, and try and sort that, like, those situations. You have to do what's right for both. You're trying to keep the players happy, but whatever the situation was, why that hadn't come at the time it should have, or whatever the reason was, you had to listen to the club side and keep them happy as well. So you're a diplomat in the middle of those ones, So
yeah, absolutely.
But the main one, obviously, as soon as I went in, fellas were coming in and saying, "Oh, you know, I should be in the team, like, you know, and all this carry on." You know, you're trying to then, well, you've got to prove yourself, like, and you know, you're trying to build their confidence up to still want to be, you know, challenging for a spotlight. You know, the worst thing is when a player downs tools and says, you know, I'm never going to get picked in this team. But that's, you know, and I always say to the players, you are the guys, the 22 of you here pick the team every week, not me. I said, you pick it on how your attitude, your response to little things, how you train, and you know, if you can get fellas working, you know, how they should be, why you've got them at the club, then you do have a problem because you've got 22 fellas busting their backsides to be in the team. But normally things happen around, you know, footballers get criticised for not playing well, but you know, they're humans and nobody knows what's happening at home or with whatever and ever, you know, they come in, they have a bad day.
And
Things happen
the
at
thing
home.
of that goes with especially League of Ireland players, and you know you hear them getting criticised, and look, that's the game we're in also. But you know, they're not multi-millionaires. You're dealing with kind of everyday people, like, really, aren't you? You know, sometimes people can forget that. I think when it's easy to throw criticism like at players or you know people at the club or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the game we're in, and we know that as a player that, you know, when you make a mistake, you know, you're gonna get 100 people shouting at you, like, you know what I mean, like, you know, and again, that's the beauty of football, you know, like the 100 people shouting at you, 100 people are cheering you, like, you know, it's that's, we're in that game, we know that, you know, some of the criticism can be harsh. Some of the praise is overpraised, like, as well, like,
absolutely.
So that's.
And how would you find that helped you now in the role that you're in now as the, you know, as I said, the top role at Cove?
Yeah, I stick to my principles of, you know, that, you know, I expect fellas to work hard. I lay that down to them from the start. I'm saying, look, you know, the work rate is important because first and foremost, if you're a footballer now, you're an athlete, and that's up to the individual to an extent to be the athlete, where he's got to look after himself. You know, as a manager, I can't go home and see whether he's having you know, a pasta or whether he's out to the chippy, like, you know, those things are down to the player at the end of the day, like, you know, and you know, from that point of view, as I say, I'll be honest with players, as you know me well enough, Dees, as well, that, you know, especially in the football one, that if you're not doing well, I tell you you're not doing well. When you're doing well, you'll get the praise, you'll get the advice, how you can improve on it, you'll get the advice what you can do better. So obviously I'm trying to encourage fellas all the time, but again, when you don't play up to it, when you and I know that you can do better, then you'll get the Ferguson, as they say, like the hurt on your, like, you know.
So I
So
got that many a day, to be fair. But I suppose it does, the role does suit you that you're in at the moment as well. You know, with your experience with working with younger players, and obviously at Cove, you do have a kind of a young squad at the moment and stuff like that. And I know it's something that we've spoken about in the past, that there probably is the talent around maybe in the Munster Senior League and the local leagues to step up to that level. But there's a lot more to it than, you know, like, it's obviously a difficult one if a person is married and has kids and a full-time job, because look, you're part-time, but it's, you know, it's part-time, full-time, really, like, isn't it? You know, you're training 3 or 4 nights a week, you're playing a game, and you're traveling, you know, your recovery, it's practically a full-time gig, like, really, isn't it?
yeah, as you say, it's part-time, full-time, like, because as you say, it is a full-time gig, and it goes back to what we said along the line there, that it's a commitment, you know, and as I said, if you do stick at it and you have a bit of potential, it's down the road where you get your rewards. Unfortunately, the League of Ireland isn't in the position where they can throw the money at the youngsters nowadays. They would probably go for a more experienced fella. So the youngster, he has to be patient, and as you said, there is a lot of talent in the out in the Munster Senior League. Again, not only me, but all different managers have asked players at various years and levels, etc. And some just don't want to commit to that, and some to an extent get scared. They're the big fish in the small pond, so to speak. When they move then to the League of Ireland, they're the small fish in the big pond. They don't want to, they don't want to get out of the comfort zone. That's human nature as well. That's the different characters that make up human beings, the world that we live in. So, yes, the talent is there. Again, fellas, if they get the opportunity, do they take it? Do they approach it right? That's the conundrum with those guys, So it's a hard balancing one. Do you take the chance on the fella that's the Georgie best, showing all the skills, or do you go for the hard worker who'll give you, and he'll be reliable, the Dennis Irwin, so to speak, like the steady eddies, And that, again, as we said earlier, that's the beauty of football, because you need a mixture of those guys, and your best player in the world won't be the same as all your buddies in the pub best player in the world. You'll be debating that all night, and the systems of play. So, as I said, that's the beauty of it. That's why we love the game,
Yeah, spot on. Look, Stewie, before we move on to a couple of questions, thanks for kind of giving us a recap on your playing career and more importantly on your coaching career, and doing some great work at Cove at the moment, and long may it continue. So fair play and all that. We'll just move on to a couple of questions if you don't mind. So generally kind of city related. So I think we kind of touched on it a while ago, but one of the questions was, what do you look for in a young player coming through?
Yeah, the first thing you have to look for is the potential. You get told of a player. So Paul Deasy, they're playing with such. So we're going to look at Paul Deasy, and first thing we see, does he shine as been reported? Has he the potential? First of all, you're looking at the technique, and then obviously, is he in the game? His work rate, or is he a talent but a lazy talent? As in, he's just
this sounds a bit like my actual report, Louisa.
I didn't mean to bring you up there, but it just came up like sense,
Very good.
So you're looking at, obviously, first and foremost, the potential. Yes, he's got the ability that you can, obviously, as a coach, improve and progress him, and then obviously when you get him in and you know him better, it's then, as we said already, the bigger picture of, is his attitude right? Is his desire right? Has he got the mentality of it? So that would obviously would be the main one.
Yeah, stuff. And I suppose the next question then is, what do you find are the differences from players who make it and don't? So what were the difference between a Kevin Long and a David Myler, or someone that maybe might have had equal, talent but just faded away? What do you generally see as the kind of the traits in those?
Again, and it goes back to what we just said, that it's the traits of those guys are the ones that their lifestyles, basically, what they do away from the pitch, and it's the dedication, the desire, the drive, whatever you want to call that, the passion. Unfortunately today, you can't just go on pure ability. In the days, George Best was the prime example. He had the pure ability, and yet he could go off and do what he wanted. Imagine imagine a Georgie Best with his ability now, with all the sports science. Imagine what he would be like, so to speak, and the prime example in today's one is Ronaldo. If you listen to him, he's driven. He wants to be the best in the world. He's challenging and lucky for him in one sense that he's played so long as Messi was there, and he always wanted to be better than Messi. So that for me has kept him at the top of his game for so long, and that is the key one. And I know players that were certainly better than me, but better than fellas that have gone across the water and gone across and played, and you've said, geez, if only he'd, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
only he'd wanted it, or if only he had the attitude to it. There's loads of those players around from when we were kids, even in the underage at City and Cove or whatever, unfortunately, at the younger ages, there's that crossroads where, you get let out, so to speak. You're doing your work at school. You're going out with your mates, meeting girls, introduced to beer, drink, and all those things. And those are the crossroads in players' pathways, basically. And you can easily be put off, training tonight, come on, we're going down, we're going out here or going out there, and fellas fall off the pathway, so to speak. And that's the big one. That is the big one, and then if yourself, like injuries and things along the way, that can obviously stop young fellas, which is cruel part of the game. Then, that's unfortunately that's life.
Great stuff. So the best player you coached who came through the Cork City Academy?
Jeez, there's one now. Am I meant to say Paul Deasy there now, am
I? Well, I know you were going to say that, so exactly, yeah.
That's a hard one, because you have all the different ones. There was Damien Delaney, he was there. Gamble was in there. Myler, as we said, all had different attributes. Gamble was probably the skill and the technique. Benno, he was one that went through pure drive, good at his job, but he was driven on to get there. Alan Brown, another one, great skill, great talent, desired to get through it, wanted to go and do it. It's probably, I'm trying to think of other players there now that have gone on. Nulse as a keeper, he's been there for forever and a day. He came through the underage as well.
Longer than yourself, I'd say, is he?
I say it at this stage now, yeah. But again, he was one that stuck at it. Mick Devine in there was evergreen, as they said, but Nulse stuck at it underneath. And as we said, now he's got his rewards for what he's done for the club now for the last however many years as first team coach, as first team player. Sorry. Hoggy came through as well, another one there. Who else would there be? Dennis Bean, another one there, scoring goals. Oh, sorry?
Shane Long,
yeah, he didn't have much time with us. He came in under us and he played only one or two underage games. Went into the first team squad. I'm not sure if he actually played a first team game for City.
I'm not sure either, yeah.
No, I don't think he did, and he was gone then. So, again, obviously, the talent and the drive there, the ones.
Was there one in particular that, you looked at in, say, training or the matches, and that you loved coaching this player in particular? One that stood out that you thought, yeah.
the again the ones that we mentioned and that have gone on, you'd like Brownie, for example, when he was in our squad, he had a knack of just scoring, and it was, yes, we're saying, can you make that run? Can you get in these positions? But for it was one when you see a commentator, the ball just seems to come to him and he'd score, like, you know what I mean? And from the early, and he was one, he played everywhere because he was playing with us. He played in midfield or up front in more of a 10 role, and then he went away to play with the Ireland underage, and they played him fullback. And me and Bowdy
he does play fullback some games now for Preston as well.
He has recently, But the first time he went away, he was with us midfield and up front, like as I said, and he went away with underage, and he played at fullback, and me and Bowdy looked at him and said, "What happened there?" Like, and he was. Yeah. He just said on the day, I play there because something happened, and that was Brownie. Like, he obviously again just wanted to play the games, and he had that talent, like, So
another ring man there now, so happy enough with that.
Exactly, like, yeah. So, stuff. But as you say, you see things in fellas in training and in games, and you'd say, yeah, he has a chance, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, and again, it's that one. We keep going back to it. It's, does he want it enough? And the guys that obviously have gone on and make great careers for themselves, they're the ones that have had the opportunity and taken it, because they wanted it. Again, as you go up the levels, if you haven't got that, you soon get found out, like,
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. So the last question there is your best moment as a coach at Cork City. So, or your best time, your best moment, I suppose, at the club.
Yeah, obviously the ones when you're winning, when you're winning the championship, so to speak, and the All Ireland as they were, they're great achievements. Obviously, taking the first team as in the caretaker role was a great one as well. I love that, and being the honour of being asked to do it at the time. But I think as a coach, I think it was the first the All Ireland, as they call it, the first league that we won. I'm trying to think now. We played up, I think it was against UCD, I think. But along that route to winning that one, you played, as you know, you played up and down the country, and winning some of those games there with let's say, not a talented squad, but no superstars in it.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
There was no superstars. There were players that, as we said, were wanting to get in the first team. Like the Dennis Beans. I think young Lordy was in there as well. Like Nults was in goal. Like, so those players that were pushing to get in the first team, and there was no superstar that was, I'm
man, like,
they were there, and they were honest guys. And I think, winning that first one, winning the first trophy, obviously with a team, is obviously going to stick with you. So that was it. Then with myself and Bowdy, the double, when we won the league and the double, and then we did it again the second year as well. So we did a double, so to speak. Brilliant. Like, so those, obviously you have those memories, and the nights at Turner's Cross when we played under lights for the lads. That's a great experience for them. Like, and they were great occasions. Obviously, then the European game against Roma and down in the Cross, like, that was another good one for the young lads. But again, being part of it as well, like, So,
some great memories over the years, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But again, as a coach, it's not about me. Like, obviously, as we said at the start, it's the part, and the main one, as is a few of the names you mentioned, getting into the City first team first and foremost, then going on to make careers from themselves. Like, that's the big part. And as I said before, if most of them speak to me, so I did something along the way, like, I think I had a little part of it, like, so that's the rewarding part of it, where they come up to you and you can talk about when we played back, and that pitch here and that pitch there and that game, and that's the rewarding part of it, that they progress. And to me, that's what a coach is about. And if you can get, as I said, if you can get majority of your squad looking that way, you've got a healthy squad, and you won't be far away off doing something as a team then, like,
Yeah, spot on. Stewie, that wraps up our episode 9. Can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast, giving us a great insight into the production of players, how you deal with young players, what you look out for in young players, and so on and so forth. And you've had so much success in producing some of Cork's best players that it's well worth the listen, and I'm sure a lot of people will take a lot from it. So much appreciated.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Dee. Hopefully it was enjoyable. I've enjoyed it, and anytime, as you know, you're welcome. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. And just from myself and from all the club, best of luck with Cove for the rest of the season. Hope the rest of the season is a great success.
Perfect. And thanks to you and City as well,
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Okay, so like I said there, that wraps up episode 9 of City Talk. Again, thanks to Stewie for coming on this week. Next week we will have former Cork City player and manager Dave Barry joining us on the podcast. So like always, please get in your questions through our social media channels, or you can email podcast.corkcityfc.ie. Thanks again to Aaron Howie on production for putting the podcast together. You can watch the podcast on our YouTube channel on Rebel Army TV. You can listen on SoundCloud, Spotify, Android and Apple Podcasts. So thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much.